Welcome to Chapter 5, Module 1, What Do Miners Do? My name's Zachary Jones, part of the Delaware Blockchain Club. You can find me on Slack at ZCJ or on Twitter at ZJonesy. So in this module, what you're going to learn is the business model and overview of how mining works. You're going to learn about how miners secure the network's transactions and how the personal incentives align with the network incentives for miners. So first, into the business model. Bitcoin miners secure the Bitcoin network. All nodes on the network have a full copy of the entire Bitcoin blockchain. Since Bitcoin is a peer-to-peer currency, there's no centralized authority like a bank. A bank knows how much money you have in the bank and will approve or deny transactions based on that. Well, there's no bank in Bitcoin. There's just a full ledger that every node has. And because of this, the node knows whether or not you have enough money because it can read all of your previous transactions. So miners have two jobs. The first is to verify that you actually have enough money to make a transaction. And second, it's to solve a difficult math problem. This math problem is a proof of work problem, which you learned about in one of the earlier modules. The miners work on solving this problem in order to create a block, get it accepted, and potentially win the reward. Now this requires a lot of computing power, which is expensive. So why mine? When a miner successfully solves the problem and their block is accepted, they get a reward of 12.5 Bitcoin. And just to give you an idea, the problem is solved roughly every 10 minutes. So every 10 minutes, someone's getting a payout of $8,200, based on the price of Bitcoin at the time of writing. That's pretty substantial. And now this reward started at 50 Bitcoin back in 2009. But since there's only ever going to be 21 million Bitcoins created, the mining reward halves every 210,000 blocks. So the first halving day was November 28th, 2012, and the second was just this summer on July 9th, 2016. So the basic business model is that your mining rewards are your revenue and your computing power and energy cost are your expenses. So a little more detail on securing the network's transactions. The miners verify that transactions can be made based on all previous transactions. Just like we said before, there's no bank accounts. The miners just have all the previous transactions and can gather how much money you can spend. There's a decentralized ledger, and by knowing every transaction, miners know everyone's balance. So imagine it looking a little bit like this. They know how much Alice, Bob, Frank, Carlos, Jane, Carly, Scott, and Kristen have because they've seen all their past transactions. But it doesn't actually look like this because Bitcoin is pseudonymous. So that means there's no names attached to these balances. There's just public keys, which essentially look like random strings. So as you see on the right, they're just random strings of letters. So you couldn't really tell if it was Alice or Bob. Once the miners verify transactions, they put them in blocks. And many miners might be getting blocks at different times and can suggest what the next block should be. And a block is just a combination of a bunch of different transactions. Here's where the tricky part and the math problem come into play. The order of the blocks is very important in preventing security flaws. And the network determines which block to accept based on which miner solves the mathematical puzzle first. There is a lot of randomness inherent in solving this mathematical problem. Every miner wants to solve it and get their block accepted in order to gain the payout, but it requires a lot of brute force. So your computer is basically just guessing different solutions, and this means that the winners are pretty much random. So basically, the fastest your computer can guess, the more chances you have of getting the mining reward. Like we said before, new blocks are mined every 10 minutes, and this is a benchmark for the network. The code of Bitcoin Core knows to adjust the difficulty of the math problem based on how frequently people are solving it. So if they're solving it every 6 minutes, then the code knows to adjust and make the problem a little bit more difficult to stay on target so that a new block is mined every 10 minutes. All right, the last section is personal and network incentive alignment. Now this is crucial for the Bitcoin network to work. So your personal incentive to mine is to use your computational power to get the mining reward. Just like we saw before, about $8,000 if you get your block accepted. Now, the network incentive is to use all these computers from across the world in order to ensure the network stays secure. Now, these incentives are in perfect alignment, which allows us to have a peer-to-peer decentralized currency for the first time. In 2009 and 2010, you could mine Bitcoin using your existing computer. But now you need specialized hardware in order to mine efficiently. So since home miners are no longer prevalent, mining is usually done by huge Bitcoin farms like you see in the bottom right. And they wouldn't do it unless there was a pretty strong economic incentive to invest in all this technology. The company knows that with its mining power, they're going to get a certain number of payouts each day. And as long as they can keep this mining reward revenue greater than their expenses, there's going to be a strong incentive to continue mining. From a network perspective, the network needs computational power to stay secure. This keeps the network safe from hackers and other security threats to the system. By paying miners for securing the network, both parties' incentives are in perfect alignment. All right. Well, thanks so much for coming with me through that module. If you have any suggestions or questions, feel free to ping me in Slack. Thanks so much for watching.